Greetings adventurers and welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. Today I'm joined by a special guest who brought a story for us and I'll let him introduce himself, as we'll be reading the story together.
G'day mates, my name is Mordecai. The story that I have brought along to the marketplace today is about a player who is a little too possessed with controlling things. The story we've got today is titled, Campaign Suddenly is Shut Down Due to Player Confrontation. This story does not have the horror effect that many others here do, but it's still sudden how some of the things ended, and I would like to read some opinions. To add a bit of context, we need to go back some months in a campaign I GM'd. It was an online homebrew 5th edition campaign that I decided to run despite being a new player. My only previous experience was pretty much an ongoing Curse of Strahd campaign that was only happening once or twice a month due to scheduling issues, so I was eager to play more D&D and always wanted to try it as a DM. I recruited 5 players, and they started as mercenaries working under the indirect rule of the Empire as a sort of special operations team. Their first mission was to find some missing colleagues who were negotiating a weapon near the battlefront. Everything was going nicely despite my inexperience. The players had made backstories related to the setting, and I tried to connect NPCs and quests to them. Like the time I brought a friend of mine in to be the killer of the cleric's brother during a side quest to contain a zombie attack on injured soldiers, and another one to be a gnomish guide when they explored the ruins of a destroyed weather station. Of course, I made some mistakes, like the time they conducted a siege to a drug factory where I took control of some NPCs, making the session sluggish and taking some combat time away from the players. I was having a blast, and the players seemed very excited about some of the plot twists, but I wrote more than enough to present the needed context. We had a problematic player, however. It was not enough to ruin the sessions or anything, but there were some, shall we call them, yellow flags. We had 4 regular players since the 5th stopped playing a few sessions in due to scheduling issues. Let's give them some suitably fake names, shall we? Tyler, our human warlock and our problem player. Ralph, the half-orc bard, very nice guy, who will be relevant later. Dave, our goblin rogue, also a very nice guy, but not very relevant. And Paul, a human playing with a Warforged Sheet cleric. A nice guy with a funny accent since he was from another country.
The most notable thing about Tyler was that he would all the time, and I mean all the time, complain about the 5th edition system, lecturing us about how superior Pathfinder 2e was, how much the rulings I had made on the spot could be solved using its rules, how it balanced the martial versus spellcaster issue, how much more you could personalize your builds, yada yada yada. I mean, some points he was making were valid, but we were playing a 5th edition game, and nobody was willing to learn a new system and just wanted to sit down and play. It even became a joke among us that he should become a Pathfinder cleric to preach the word of the superior system. Tyler's characters also made frequent racist remarks towards other races that were not humans, which, to be honest, could be a character trait that could lead to some development, but it was a little uncomfortable to listen when you don't know the person in real life. After about 20 or so sessions, he started not paying much attention, had an awful mic, and would just sometimes not be present for half the session. The campaign died after Paul quit due to scheduling, but to be fair, I was losing grip of it because I was both dedicating a lot of time to work and dealing with a long-term injury. It was a shame, especially because we were in Paul's hometown, where he needed to fight in the same arena his brother was killed. It was a peaceful end, and it honestly went pretty far, and when considering how new I was at GMing, and the fact that the group was assembled by random people on the internet. The problem, though, occurred during another campaign happening at the same time as the previous one. Tyler invited me to be a player for his in-real-life friends game. I was excited given that my COS campaign was so infrequent. He also invited Ralph, and it would lead to an unlikely issue since they already played together. Me and Ralph decided to make backstories together. We were both elves, and were the only PCs that knew each other before the party was assembled. It was a cool dynamic because I made a pompous, naive, male blade singer wizard, and Ralph made a grumpy, resourceful, outcast female soul knife rogue. His character would help mine make quick decisions, and mine would help his rogue socialize. We enrolled as mercenaries in Orcish lands, where we met the other players, including Tyler's, which, if it was not for the class, was exactly the same in appearance and personality of the one in my game. I actually called him by his other character's name at least a few times during the game. Tyler immediately wanted to take the leadership role of the group, which I didn't mind since my character was too much of a spoiled young lad to be fit as leader. But Ralph was opposed every time, despite spending most of the time quiet. At that point, I thought it was only an in-character argument, but oh boy was I wrong. During fights, scouting missions, and social interactions, Ralph would usually psychic bond with me since he knew my character the longest, and either the sorcerer or the fighter, but never with Tyler's ranger since Ralph's PC didn't trust Tyler's PC. During one quest, we were retrieving a shopkeeper NPC's stolen wares, but the fighter and the rogue got to them first and had some time alone. They roleplayed a scene where they briefly, and I emphasize briefly, contemplated stealing some of the wares before deciding against it. A quest later, we were sent to rescue the daughter of a mayor from the hands of some cultists. The DM showed us the enemy base we were sneaking around and it looked like certain death. The DM specifically warned us it was certain death and we had to get the girl out in a creative way. He even gave us a break to discuss the idea out of character. Tyler wanted to go for a crazy plan where the fighter would mount the druid and go for a likely suicidal distraction while we took the girl out of the camp. The group argued against it, specifically the druid, that said that he could run away as a horse, but it would be unfair to send the fighter to his doom. He was insistent and annoying, while we were trying to settle for another solution. We decided to come up with an infiltration plan by the druid, which Tyler immediately voted against since the druid would be solving everything himself. When Ralph took the druid's side, Tyler complained that Ralph's character was stupid since he was so collaborative and helpful in the other campaign as Bard, and his rogue was selfish, pointing out that he was willing to steal wares from a merchant and how much of a dick move it was, how bad it made his player character. He also reminded us about something that he said out of character in the beginning of this campaign, that he would not hesitate to enter PvP mode against anyone in the party who was not willing to collaborate. Of course, this rant had something to do about Pathfinder and 5th edition and blah blah blah, and I'll let you take the rest of the story from here.
Another annoying instance was when we fought an opponent that was entirely immune to non-magical damage, which made his character and Ralph's almost useless and almost made mine useless as well, since I was a very melee-focused wizard. He complained that it was unfair against martial classes and that his holy book, Pathfinder 5th edition, has better rules. Also, during almost all of the combat, he would send me private messages asking me why I did not pick a certain spell that would make the combat much easier, and I simply responded that I simply wanted to play how I wanted to. The straw that broke the camel's back was during an underwater combat session, when we were fighting a bunch of sharks and we were getting absolutely destroyed. The druid had already been kicked out by the GM at this point. Ralph, seeing how dire the situation was, decided to dive deeper to find somewhere to hide, and in doing so had found some type of underwater cavern. Psychically bounded to him, I am informed about this, and we gather for a desperate maneuver. The other wizard that took the druid's place casts a teleportation spell and sends us all to the cavern. We are safe. During the whole combat and some previous sessions, Tyler's microphone is absolutely terrible, making him have to repeat his sentences at least once, and thus making his rants even more annoying. Finally, after a lot of arguing by Tyler about how irresponsible Ralph was for making that call, and that we should have fought the sharks to death, and probably something about Pathfinder as well, the GM simply called the session there. Not only was the session over, but the entire campaign was as well, entirely out of the blue. I am still a little confused about what happened, so some of the details might be a little bit off. Another reason I wanted to write about this story was as a sort of exercise to try and remember it. With regards to the Pathfinder 2nd edition versus D&D 5th edition debate, whilst bringing up some points and considerations from other systems can help a new DM improve or solidify their own rulings, Tyler seems much more interested in trying to get an entire group that has agreed to play 5th edition to completely switch systems mid-campaign. In a way, him being overly assertive with this kind of foreshadows his descent into inheriting a crown of madness.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on this point. It doesn't bode well for the campaign when the man's already saying this system that I've played before is so much better. It's kind of like when the person comes in and they talk about how great their DM does it, or how great they would have done it if they're the DM.
When he has his leadership position, he effectively tries to assert control over other characters with out-of-game messages telling the other players exactly what to do. This kind of thing usually correlates with a my way of a highway approach instead of being a more party-oriented approach.
Yeah, when you're messaging people out of game, like demanding what they should do, you're just as bad as the people trying to use like charm spells or like rolling to persuade the other party members to make them play your way. If you want to play a game where you're the main character, there are plenty of single player games where you can control a bunch of other party members. This doesn't seem like a good fit for him at all.
Somehow I get the impression even if Tyler did get to play Pathfinder with this group, he would still be having rants about how the rulings of the various GMs were incorrect, or didn't follow rules as intended or written, blah blah blah. Speaking of, I find it odd that Tyler hasn't attempted to run his own Pathfinder game. However, that's probably a blessing, as he strikes me as the kind of player who would have had his DMPC be the star of the show, instead of his actual players.
I got the impression that maybe this guy has tried DMing in the past. He would 100% have his own homebrew rule or different interpretation of the rule that makes it better when he's a player, but you know the moment he sits into that DM seat, he's going to be ruling against the players left and right, using the exact opposite logic that he would have used as the player.
It's kinda tragically funny that he calls out Ralph for being irresponsible for wanting to save the entire group by helping them get to safety instead of continuing to hang out in battle, slowly getting mauled to death by sharks whilst underwater.
Yeah, no, I think it's as simple as this man thinks any idea that isn't his is reckless, because as he said, the player character is stupid. He probably thinks he's, smarter than the players at the table as well, but he'll not admit it outright. I do think it's really interesting that the druid got kicked out for being adversarial to Tyler in all these situations. The DM was for whatever reason taking his side to the point where he's willing to kick this guy out, which is kind of insane because if you let Tyler start to get his way, someone else is going to step up and be annoyed. And then what are you going to do? Kick the whole party for being annoyed by Tyler? It was great going over the story with you. Is there anything you'd like to let the people know about you and your channel?
Oh sure. Much like Loot, I narrate various RPG horror stories. On that topic, I want to give Loot a huge thanks for inviting me here into the marketplace today to help narrate the story. With that, have a fantastic day, mates.
Thank you everyone for stopping by. It was great having you along. Make sure to like and subscribe and check out his channel to give him a sub as well. I hope to see you guys in the next video. Farewell for now.